Hey guys, hanging out with Justin Nava. Justin, thanks for being here, man.
Hey, I'm glad to be here. Appreciate you having me.
Awesome, dude. So give us a little synopsis. I don't know what the right word is.
Oh,
This is the end of the day.
I
So
know.
this interview could go a number of different places, buddy.
Let's do it.
All right. So
Just happy to be along for the ride.
awesome, man. So you run your own marketing company right now. Tell us a little bit about it.
So I run Nava Church Marketing. We help churches be known in their community, help them have a website that's easy to find and easy to take a next step with. Go out and find people that they're equipped to serve, and basically spread the gospel.
So is it mainly website? You do some marketing?
Website
It is
is
what?
kind of the cornerstone.
Okay.
That's kind of like your church home. You can go out and do ministry, but it all comes back to equip people and make disciples and encourage people in your home church. And that's kind of your website is your online home church. You can go out and do social media, run ads, but ultimately all that traffic, all those people are going to come back to your church website.
How important is a church website to a church?
It's kind of like having your own building, right? Like we start plants in movie theaters and homes, in local coffee shops. Eventually, for most churches, the goal is to have your own HQ, your own church building. That's what your website is. You control it, you own it, you have the final say in what goes on it and what people take, the actions that people take on it. You're not living in someone else's environment, so it's critical. That's your online church home.
How many people visit a website before they visit a church building?
9 out of 10.
9 out of 10.
Nine
Okay.
out of 10.
I've heard 8 out of 10. I've heard 80%. So I believe you.
Yeah.
I mean,
The latest stat I looked at, I can't quote it, might have been, I don't even want to say who it might have been, 93%.
I, I absolutely believe it. I mean, when's the last time you've gone to a church without
When's the last time you went anywhere, Carl, without looking
checking
at?
it out online?
I invited my dad to dinner at a new restaurant, Jalisco's. It's an upscale Mexican restaurant.
Yeah.
And we went to of course, we were like, okay, what kind of, what do we need to wear? What do we need to whatever? Well, he met us there, and he was telling me stories about the chef and what she did in Mexico and why she came and founded the restaurant. And that made him enjoy the experience so much more than even I did. And I invited him to the restaurant.
Mm.
So that anything we do now, we want to go online to see what to expect, what's available opportunity wise, whether it's a restaurant, what do they have that matches my preferences?
Yeah.
What I'm looking at the appetizers, I'm looking at the dessert, my wife's looking at the main meal. Do they have a kids menu? That's something that we do just for one meal. And how much more important is that when we bring in the spiritual baggage that's part of that. So huge, not just churches, but anything we do. People are just going online first.
What's the point? So meaning I know that you have a passion of helping churches with their website to turn them into guests, to see them become visitors, and then ultimate goal is to see them saved and growing in their faith. So give me some steps to get there. How can my website help me get there?
We take a very uh, church design approach. And by design, I'm not talking about visual design. I'm talking about why has God planted your church? Even if it was 100 years ago, why does your church exist? I believe every church is uniquely equipped to uniquely reach a unique group of people. And with that, we all have different discipleship journeys that we build for our community, congregants, members, whatever you want to call them. So for me, the website's primary purpose is to be on mission. And what that looks like practically is your website's purpose is to get someone on the first step of that discipleship journey. So if you want people to come into your church and enter that discipleship process on a Sunday morning, your website should drive people to Sunday morning. If it's to get people hooked into a group, then your website's job should be to get people connected to a group. One of the clients that we worked with a few months ago, they want people to come in on a Wednesday night and have a meal. So the whole message of the website, the only thing we want people to do, not the only thing, but the main thing we want people to do is to come to that Wednesday night meal.
Hmm. What are some things, maybe 2 or 3 things that pastors or ministry leaders are doing with their website that they need to stop? Ineffective stuff.
Ironically, talking so much about the church. Uh, we don't live in a time anymore, 50, 60 years ago, where people know that the church is the answer. We've relegated, and this is our fault too. We've relegated ourselves to the sideline to where we're no longer the answer, but we're an option. And A lot of pastors and church leaders think, well, they're on our church website. They want to learn about our church. What they really want is to learn how the church can serve them, right? I know you're a Mexican. Go back to the Mexican restaurant, right? I know you're a Mexican restaurant. I know you got Mexican food, but what makes it so special? What makes it separate from the Mexican restaurant down the street? Or what's going to make this a unique
Right.
opportunity? It's the service, the whatever. So, as far as church websites, it needs to be more about where do you fit into our church? How do we understand you? You ask 100 people what a church is, you're going to get 117 different answers.
Yeah.
So, really, it's not about what church is, it's about who you are and where can I fit into your church? How will I what will my life be like after I connect with you? And
So
oftentimes that's a representation of what Jesus is going to do in my life through your church.
classic, what's in it for me?
Yep.
How does that translate into text copy, visuals on your website? How does that translate into what's in it for me when I go to your website? What should I be seeing?
Yeah. So we take a very, again, a personalized approach, and we actually start with the messaging. Because again, you preach unique sermons, you have unique worship sets. Even though you might be using a curriculum that 1,000 churches are using, no one can teach it uniquely like your Sunday school teachers or your group leaders. So we start with the message first. And that's going to be like, what's the one thing you want people to remember about your church? What's the one thing you want them to remember? What's the one step you want them to take? Those are the primary things. And then from that, what visuals are going to back that up? Because we don't want you just to say what you're going to do, but showcase what that looks like. So if you talk about being a welcoming church, show me the different type of people that are welcome at your church. If you say you're uh, a biblically focused church, show me how that looks like. Show me people in worship, in groups, in conversation. If you say we're all about being Christ-centered in fellowship and community, show me what that community looks like on your church. And that combined with the messaging, you say it, you represent it, you tell me testimonials and stories of what Christ is doing in the lives of the people at your church, I can then start to see where I can fit in.
With that, what kind of images or photos should I use on my website? Can I pull from anywhere?
You, this is why we start with the messaging, because especially as an outside agency, when we build churches, we start with the web content, and it's actually a Google Doc. We turn that over to clients, and then we say, what images can you get? Because you probably don't have any images so far, but what images can you get, even if it's taken on a phone, that showcases we're a church for the people. We care about your family. We have something for your kids, your moms, your dads, your grandparents. Then we ask them to go out and capture those photos. So whatever you're saying there on the site, and this is why we take a message center approach, because it's hard to capture welcome to First Baptist. But if you say this is a place where you can learn to love better and live better and serve better and give better, now you have some direction on photography to capture that. And even how do we enhance that with visuals that aren't photography within our event graphics or ministry logos? It all comes back to what's that primary message? What did God design your church to be?
Can I use stock photos on my website?
I am actually going to go against what a lot of people suggest. I think you should always first go with the photos that you have of your people. Sometimes that's absolutely impossible for whatever reason for some churches, in which case you can, but it needs to be aligned with who your church is. So if you're not a multicultural church, don't use multicultural pictures on your site because that's going to be a system shock and you're going to end up adding to people's spiritual baggage. So
Hmm.
if we're doing an event for the first time, like we're having a Valentine's Day dance, we've never done it before. We've never done a dance at our church before. I have no images to do with that. Okay, well, now you have my permission. If you need to get some photography, don't lie, don't be deceitful, but again, enhance the messaging of what your church Valentine's Day dance is going to be.
So if I don't have any photos or the photos that I have are really low resolution, so they might give you, oh, here's the photos I have, and you're like, I can't use that because that's 100 by 100
Yeah.
in dimension size. So if I blow that up, it's going to be all pixelated and nasty. You would prefer quality over a quality stock photo over a low res.
If I
Real.
didn't have any time, I had to get this up tomorrow, I would.
Yeah.
If I had 24
Yeah.
hours, I would find a family and try to get some photos on my phone, even if it was an iPhone 7.
Yeah.
I would still prefer that over stock photos. But if it's like, we got to get this up tomorrow, it slipped the plate, pastor's got a press release going out in the morning, and we're expecting 500 to 1,000 people to come to our website tomorrow, yeah, let's go ahead and do that. But let's make sure it's at least aligned to who our church is.
Okay, overarching question, why do your visuals matter when it comes to your website?
People believe what they see more than what they hear, or at least what they read.
Because 'Cause
And,
they're
and
probably not reading?
yeah, because they're scanning a lot. Yeah, you can lead me that direction if you want. Yeah, people scan websites. They're just going to read your headline. They're not going to read that chunk of text that pastor wrote and said you had to put on that website,
Yeah,
or pastor that you want to put on that website.
yeah.
And again, it also reinforces what that looks like. It's one thing for me to say to my fiance, "I'm going to provide for you." It's another thing to show a picture of that bank statement that says, "Yeah, I'm going to actually provide for you." So, all the visuals need to back up what you say. And it's an amazing thing happens when you spend some time to intentionally have visuals that represent your church and communicate the message that we're here to serve you and we understand where you are. You don't have to say that much on your website.
Hmm. Do you still need some of that text for SEO purposes?
You do. That's a little bit of a different strategy.
Yeah.
But something that a funny thing happens. You can rely less on SEO if you have, number one, strong stories of what God's doing in your life, in the life of your church, because then your word of mouth becomes more powerful. SEO becomes very important when you have people come into your site that are just unsure of who you are.
Right.
But if they came to your site and they have a purpose and you're showing what God is doing in your church, scale doesn't matter as much because you're doing a lot more with a lot less.
Mm. What about other graphics or video content? So it could be banners, headers, embedded videos, testimonials, things like that. How important are those things on a website?
Testimonials are one of the most important things you should have on your church website. A challenge that I just gave myself recently is to have a website that's more testimonials than things we're saying about the church.
Mm.
I think we see that in modern day marketing outside of the church. How many times have you gone to a coach, product, and half the page is just screenshots of Facebook messages and texts and Facebook reviews and all that stuff?
Right.
Because that stuff sells more than anything that I can say about product XYZ. And I think that's intentional. God designed us to share stories. God designed us to, when the Bible itself was spread through generations of just telling each other these stories.
Mm.
And I think um, we've lost that a little bit, or if we have expected visuals and graphics and stuff to tell that story, and we need to get back to that. So 100% testimonials are like at the very top. When you start planning to iterate, update, or rebuild your website, testimonials need to be one of the first things that you start collecting because that's the most important piece of content that we have as a church. I
How?
don't know if that answered your
No,
question
that's
or if
good.
we got
That's
off the
good.
track there.
Um, what is something or maybe one or two things that like I know I'm going to do this on every single church website. Like this is a must. You have to have this. Maybe testimonies is that, but like you have to have this if we're going to build your website. This is a non-negotiable.
Two questions that I've already kind of alluded to earlier. If someone comes to your website and they leave, what's the one thing you want them to remember about your church? That's the number one thing. And that is often like kind of these different people ask that different ways. That's the way that I ask it when it comes to websites. What's your brand message? What's your thread? But for me, it's like, what's the one thing you want people to remember? Because oftentimes, 99% of the people that come to your website, they're not going to take an action. They're not going to plan a visit. They're not going to fill out a contact form. They're not going to RSVP for an event, but they're going to leave you. So I want you to leave them with an impression. What's the one thing you want them to remember about your church? And the number two thing is then what do you want them to do? What action do you want them to take on your website? And then all roads need to point to that.
What is the usual action that they should take?
Plan a visit, come on Sunday. Um, Sometimes I'll ask a pastor, what's the one thing you want people to do when they're on your site? "Oh, I want them to see, what's happening on Sunday." I say, okay, what's the gospel impact? If someone knows what you're doing on Sunday, does that change their life in any way? And it's kind of the same thing in our personal Bible studies. There's a difference between knowing of God and knowing God.
Yeah.
And so I want them to not just know about your Sunday, I want them to commit,
Yeah.
plan a visit, right? Uh, Tell me what special accommodations you need to get here on Sunday. Register your kids. Tell us, we're going to have a gift for your kids if they're coming too. kind of thing. So I want them to take an action. And then on the back end, what that does is that lets us nurture that commitment. So, hey, I'm going to be there Sunday. So, all right, we got you down. We're going to save a gift for you. Here's what to expect. And then maybe Friday before they come and visit, here's some testimonials of what God's doing in the life of this church. And hopefully in that, they'll see what God can do in them. And then, Saturday night, hey, here's some final details for your visit, maybe where to park, where the communication center is. I don't know if I want to put a map there for security reasons, but there's some things that you can do to just make sure on Sunday morning they're going to be there, or whenever your worship time is.
All right, I'll leave you with this. One thing or a couple of things that I keep seeing on a website that's missing. One of those is, or that's hard to find, is the city and address. Like if you want me to come to your church and I cannot find where your church is located, that's a problem. Do you find things like that that when you are kind of doing a review of where a website is that you're looking for and going, this is a constant problem?
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. There's some basic things you can do. Like everyone knows there's going to be a map at the bottom, right? Even the Mexican restaurant I'm checking out, if I need to know where it is and I don't see it right there when I load the screen, I'll scroll to the bottom. Most people know that's kind of the general way we use the internet now. Some churches don't have that. Some churches forget that. Sometimes it's buried in a little drop-down box because that's what the template says.
Right.
Don't just get stuck in the template.
Right.
But that's a huge thing for me. The way that we do websites, and it's not for everyone, especially larger churches that already have a brand presence. The way that we do websites is a little bit different and may not work out for them. But we see it work really well for churches between 30 and 300. We want to get them the idea. We want to get them sold on the idea of Jesus and church. And then from there, they can learn the logistical details. And so for us, what that looks like is we have the city in the header, but it's a non-important entity. We want to highlight Jesus first.
Yeah.
And then from there, it's like, okay, yeah, now I'm going to plan a visit. Okay, now let's talk about the address, hours, and all that stuff, because I want them to, again, remember Jesus and remember the church, what makes it unique, rather than remember, this church meets at 11. That's secondary to me. I want them to know Jesus first.
Awesome. Justin, thank you so much for your time. And we're going to Mexican food right now.
Oh, sounds delicious.
This has been a podcast presentation of Church Visuals. Executive produced by Carl Barnhill. Edited by Mario Franco. Title and show graphics by Angie Lomas. For more resources to help you visually communicate the gospel, visit churchvisuals.com.